Well, I think as a young person, before I became kind of conscious of racism, I was like many others. I felt like I had stereotypes about Native Americans, you know, Pocahontas, and all that crap.
Like my first interaction with the media's portrayal of like Native Americans was like watching Pocahontas as a kid. And
my first portrayal in the media was through Pocahontas. It kind of fantasized for
oh my gosh, she's so strong and like she's so resilient, but then never like really considered the other aspects that go along with that movie, like the white savior and like all of the things that do come along with Disney movies.
That kind of like created the separation for me.
News media has been detrimental to how I think about Native Americans, especially as a child.
And then it wasn't until like more recent years where I kind of seeked out media sources on my own.
I think I'm more appreciative of like media that comes out and like tells more true or like more like real stories about like Native Americans, like in response to like the pipeline from a little while back and like the solidarity that like from the news articles that I read about Native American groups coming together.
Then also, though, that my consciousness was partially affected by debates about changing team names, and so media has also had a sort of, I think, other effect.
I mean, I've only been here for 2 years, a little less than, so I guess it hasn't super influenced me a lot, especially because we're not seeing a lot of Indigenous people in the media in general. I'm a Canadian, so I have heard a lot about and learned a lot about Indigenous peoples in Canada, so I have a lot of background there, and we're constantly talking about holding the government accountable up there. I personally don't think that it's being published, it's being written about. I don't think it's being talked about that frequently.
It wasn't. So I have this very distinct memory. When I was in 2nd grade, we did like a Thanksgiving Day like play, basically. And looking back, I see all of the stereotypes and tropes about Native Americans being perpetuated during that, and I think that was indicative of like my teachings as a child.
It wasn't. Like, I grew up in southern Ohio and did take field trips to burial grounds, but it was very much like, you know, it's a museum exhibit. You know, it's like they don't exist anymore. This is this interesting past that we should look at through a glass.
I don't think critically enough. Like I think like I remember like learning about it in my like AP history class, like AP US history class, and like I guess like a lot of people know the story, like Christopher Columbus came, and then I guess as a kid you're like, oh, Christopher Columbus and the Native Americans all had or people from the Mayflower all had that dinner together, and that's how we have Thanksgiving, and then also like still like fantasized versions of like the actual really dark and horrible reality of what Native American peoples have faced throughout the years at the hands of like colonizers and such.
We did have a pretty decent education and background on like the history of Indigenous peoples in Canada. It was embedded into our elementary school education, but not so much in high school, I would say.
The only history taught is the history of white people, and so Native Americans, if they were part of that, then they were, you know, that message of they were savages and we came over and took the land that was rightfully ours.
And like, I feel like once we went past that, like once we were like, okay, so after that, after the white colonizers took the land away from the Native Americans, that was it with them. And like we don't talk about like the current and like what's going on now and like how this group is like still so marginalized and like still so taken advantage of.
So it was a colonizer's history that was taught to me.
Not just the land itself, but the ability to give thanks, the ability to use the water. I think a constant battle, just like how our systems work, like how capitalism works and how America was built, is property and land, I think is a huge issue.
I think the biggest problem is just preserving their culture.
Land use and the failure of our federal government to uphold treaties.
Having their rights respected especially with the governments. I know it's a huge problem in Australia, also in the Americas. Just having their space respected, their culture respected, and giving them enough opportunities.
Well, probably the environment, quality of, or lack thereof. And health. Healthcare is a huge problem. The mortality and morbidity, death and illness rates are highest in this country among some of the worst diseases, at least, are highest among Native Americans. Some of the worst health outcomes.